Good morning, students. I am Tanushree Pagar, Assistant Professor at KTHM College, Nasik. I will be dealing with the Molecular Biology 1 paper from your syllabus. Before we directly jump into the topics which are there in the syllabus, first we'll see what exactly the subject means, meaning what exactly is the molecular biology. So according to definition, it is the branch of biology that deals with the study of structure and function of the macromolecules like proteins and nucleic acids that are essential to life. So as the name itself suggests, molecular biology. Biology is the living system, and molecular are nothing but the molecules or macromolecules which plays a vital role within our body. There is one more definition which talks in detail about molecular biology. That is, it is the field of biology that studies the composition, structure, and interactions of cellular molecules such as nucleic acids and proteins that carry out biological processes essential for the cell's function and maintenance. So, as you all know, our body or our cells goes through several different functions, or they go with the several different cellular processes like cell differentiation is there, cell division is there, tissue repair mechanism is there, DNA replication is there. So all these processes needs a complete association of all these macromolecules together. And basically what exactly we are going to study about this molecule is the structure, composition and the function. Now before we directly go to the topic, first we'll see which are the different units which we are going to study and what they are dealing with. So first unit, that is historical and conceptual background. It is giving you a brief idea about what was the source or what is the origin of molecular biology. Then what are these nucleic acids were derived from, or what was the basis of their isolation. Then what is the structure of these nucleic acids, their properties and functions. Then different forms of DNA and different types of nucleic acids. Then what were the scientists, or which were the scientists who put their contribution in the discovery of this genetic material, and the important experiments throughout this discovery. Then second unit is talking about concept and organization of genome. So here you are going to deal with the concept of genome and how exactly it is organized within a tiny nucleus of your cell. So our cell contains different cellular organisms and organelles, and nucleus is one of them, and within that nucleus your DNA or a genome is associated. So how exactly it is packaged into that tiny nucleus, that we are going to see here, and we are going to deal with the organization of genome in prokaryotes as well as in eukaryotes, plus whatever the genetic material is present within your mitochondria and within your chloroplast also, that is organelles DNA or organelles genome. Then your third unit talks about the genetic code. So as the name itself suggests, within this particular unit you are going to study all aspects related to genetic code. That is what exactly this concept is and where it plays its role, or how exactly this genetic code is generated and what is its function. Like if you have genetic code with you, then you can decode the information on DNA which talks about, or which gives you an idea about what protein it will synthesize. So particular gene of your DNA synthesize a particular protein, and that guidance is given by your genetic code. Then fourth unit is talking about your replication of DNA. So here you are going to study about overall process of synthesis of DNA within prokaryotes as well as in eukaryotes, and where exactly or who discovered this process, and what are the different requirements of this process and the regulation of DNA replication. So for today's lecture, the contents are molecular biology or molecular basis of heredity and central dogma of molecular biology, and discovery of DNA as a genetic material. So we are going to study three very important and remarkable experiment in the discovery of DNA, that is Griffith's experiment, Avery, MacLeod and McCarthy's experiment, and Hershey and Chase experiment. So let's begin. This particular unit starts with your first topic, that is molecular basis of heredity. Now molecular basis of heredity, what it is dealing with is what are the molecules or what is the phenomenon behind heredity. So first we should know what is the meaning of heredity. So heredity is nothing but passing on of traits from parents to their offspring. So whatever the different characteristics any particular organism or individual acquires, all those are coming from their parents. So this is nothing but the heredity. So whatever characters or traits we have all of them because of our parents. So these passing on of traits from one generation to the next is nothing but your heredity. Now this basic idea, or what exactly this passing on of traits occurs, or how exactly it occurs, it was first given by Gregor Mendel, and you must are aware about his very famous experiment on breeding of pea plants, that is F1 generation and F2 generation, and all those seven contrasting characteristics. Apart from that, he was successful in finding out different laws of inheritance and how exactly they influences the pattern of heredity. Then here is the journey of discovery of genetic material starts. There were many scientists after Gregor Mendel who worked on this particular genetic material and tried to put their contribution in finding out what exactly genetic material is. I have enlisted certain important names here: Friedrich Mischer, Albert Kossel, Walter Fleming, and Oswald Avery. So we are going to study their contribution one by one. So first is Friedrich Mischer in 1869. Whenever the name of nucleic acid comes, he was the first who worked on them. So he was the Swiss physician and biologist. He first isolated nuclear material from the lymphoid cells. So he was given with the task of studying what is the nuclear material, or what exactly is present, or what is the chemical composition of the nucleus of a cell. So for his experiment, he selected lymphoidal cells, or WBCs. So it was not that easy at that time to isolate these WBCs from their original location. So what he did, he went into the hospital and he tried to take out these lymphoidal cells from the patient's pus sample, because whenever there is an infection, your lymphoidal count or a WBC's count arises there. So he took out all those lymphoidal cells sample and he experimented, or he gave certain uh, treatment of solutions in order to isolate that nuclear material from the cell. So he gave the alkaline treatment. As a result of alkaline treatment, whatever cell content or cell membrane was there, it burst out and the nuclear material came out. And from that nuclear material, he called that substance as a nuclein. So he was the first to coin the term nuclein, and after chemical analysis of that substance by certain chemists, it was further named as DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid. Further, the next scientist, Albert Kossel, worked on Friedrich Mischer's nuclein substance. So he identified nuclein as a nucleic acid further by again studying its composition, and once he achieved that composition, it was observed that it was very rich in phosphorus and it was very low in the sulfur. So the amount of phosphorus made it acidic in nature. He was awarded with the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine in 1910 for his discovery of these genetic material, or for his discovery in this nucleic acid. So he isolated those 5 nitrogenous bases that are now considered to be the basic building blocks of nucleic acid. So we are going to study these building blocks later on. So he isolated those nitrogenous bases. The term nitrogenous bases indicates that these are the organic compounds which are very high in nitrogen as well as carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Further, Oswald Avery in 1881 put his contribution, which was very remarkable. So the experiment which he did with his colleagues, that is MacLeod and McCarthy, was very famous, and he was almost there to prove that DNA was the genetic material. He was the American physician and medical researcher, and Avery was the first molecular biologist and a pioneer in immunochemistry. Apart from all of this, he was very famous for his experiment that showed that DNA is a transforming principle. During 1940s, scientific community was very confused about DNA and protein, whether which thing among both of these macromolecules acts as a genetic material, because the confusion was very obvious, because proteins were made up of 20 different amino acids. So they thought that whatever the variation which is there in every individual, it is just because of those 20 different amino acids, or they contribute their most of the part in the variation. But later on it was proved that not protein but DNA acts as a genetic material. And why they were confused? Because DNA is only made up of 4 nucleotides, that is ATGC, adenine, guanine, cytosine and thymine. But the proteins were made up of 20 different acids, 20 different amino acids. And second important thing, the proteins or the amount of proteins present in the cell or within our body, it is much more abundant than the DNA. So they thought that every cell contains proteins as a genetic material. So all scientific community were supporting that proteins acts as a genetic material. But these three experiments, that is Griffith's experiment, Avery, MacLeod and McCarty's experiment, and Hershey and Chase experiment, later on completely proved that not proteins but DNA acts as a genetic material. So the very first and remarkable experiment in this is the Griffith's experiment. So in 1928, Frederick Griffith first tried to demonstrate that genetic information could be transferred from one generation to the next or from one cell to the another. So let me tell you one more term here, that is transformation. Transformation is the phenomenon in which one bacterial cell passes its genetic material or its DNA to the another bacterial cell. So whenever this transfer of nucleic acids or a DNA occurs between two bacterial cells, then only it is termed as transformation. And he put forth the transformation principle. So what he exactly did in his experiments? For his experiment, he took two strains of bacteria, Streptococcus pneumoniae. Streptococcus pneumoniae is the bacterial strain which is responsible for causing pneumonia in mice as well as in mammals. So he was already working on these bacterial strains. So he tried certain experiment to prove that how exactly this transfer of traits occurs. So he selected two types of bacterial strains, R strain and rough strain. Now why they were named so, R strain and rough strain? Because of their physical appearance on the nutrient agar plate. So he took both of these strains and he grew them on the nutrient agar plate. And as a result, whatever the rough strain were there, they were showing rough colony appearance once they were grown, and whatever the smooth strains of bacteria were there, they were showing somewhat smooth appearance on the nutrient agar plate after their growth. So you can see in the diagram also, the smooth strain possesses one extra outer capsule coat which makes it somewhat special or smooth in its nature. But it is not only giving that smooth appearance, but it was also responsible for its protection. Meaning this smooth coating on the S strain was making it very much strong in order to protect itself from the immunological attacks or the host cells attack. But on the other side, if you talk about R strain, they were not having this kind of capsule or a mucopolysaccharide layer on their outer surface, which made it very susceptible to the immunological cells or the attack by host immune cells. So eventually your rough strain became virulent in nature because they were not capable of protecting themselves from the immune cells, and your S strain were virulent in nature. That means they can cause an infection. So the properties were very clear. R strain were rough in nature. They were avirulent in nature, meaning they were not responsible for causing pneumonia. And second, they were non-capsulated. So rough, that means non-capsulated. And the smooth strain, their appearance was smooth. They were virulent, meaning they were able to cause the infection, and they were capsulated. So that capsule made them somewhat special in causing it gave it the virulence factor. So during his experiment, he tried 4 different combinations, or you can say 4 different trials on mice cells or a mice itself. So first he took S strain, leaving S strain, and he injected that strain into the mice. As a result, now your S strain were virulent in nature, so they caused pneumonia, or they developed pneumonia into the mice, and eventually mice died. Secondly, he took living R strain. Now R strain were not able to cause any infection to the mice. So as expected, whatever that mice injected with R strain was there, it didn't develop any kind of symptoms and it survived. Now talking about third case, in this particular thing he gave some variation, like he took a strain of bacterial strains and he heat killed those strain, meaning he provided a certain amount of temperature to those S strain in order to completely remove their valence factor, that is the outer coat of that bacterial cell. Now, as a result, they were not able to cause any infection. So, when such heat-killed strain were injected into the mice, that mice survived because no symptoms of pneumonia was developed because of heat-killed strain. So, their virulence factor were completely eliminated. Now, in the fourth case, he tried combination of two. That is the result of second experiment and result of third experiment. So, he took living R strain which were non-virulent in nature, but he mixed those strains with the heat-killed S strain. Now, if you see the outcome of these two combinations of these two types of experiment, that is when he injected R strain, living R strain into the mice survived. And in third case, that is where he used the heat-killed S strain of bacteria and injected to mice, still mice survived, right? So when the combination of these two will be injected, what was expected to Griffith? That mice should survive. But surprisingly, mice died. Now, this was the confusion, or this create very much problems in its experiment. Like, he was not able to explain why did that mice died. What was the reason behind its death? So, according to that fourth experiment in which he took the mixture of those two strains, he tried to conclude that one living cell could transfer the genetic material of heredity to the next generation, meaning whatever that hit killed S type of strains were there, something from that hit killed strain must have entered into the living R type of bacteria, making them virulent in nature from non-virulent character. So initially R strain, living R strain were completely non-virulent in nature. They were not causing any kind of infection, but due to mixing with this hit killed S strain, something from that S strain entered into the R strain and made it virulent in nature as a result, mice died. And he called this phenomenon as a transforming principle, but he was not able to explain what exactly that chemical substance is there, or what exactly that substance is which entered into the R strain. So further, to prove his discovery, that is transforming principle, or to finding out what is the chemical nature of that substance which transfers from one generation to the another, second group of scientists, that is Avery, MacLeod and McCarty, performed their experiment. So they continued with the Griffiths experiment only, but they utilized certain additions, like they used enzymes called proteases, RNases and DNases. Now, as you all know, enzymes are biocatalysts, and as these enzymes were digestive in nature, their function was what? To digest a particular molecule. Like proteases were there to digest the proteases or to completely degenerate the protein molecules. Whatever RNases were there, their function was to completely digest the RNA molecule, and DNases, their function was to completely regenerate the DNA molecule. Now, what they focused on from Griffith's experiment was the hit-killed S strain. So, what problem or what conclusion was given by Griffith's experiment was only on the basis of that hit-killed S strain. So, they focused on hit-killed S strain type of bacteria. So, they took the S strain of bacteria, they hit-killed them, and they completely removed whatever the lipids and the carbohydrate component was there in the bacterial cell, because confusion was only between DNA and protein. So whatever the excess of material were there, they completely removed them out. So they again took three combinations. They tried three combinations to prove their experiment. First thing what they did was they removed carbohydrates and lipids from the hit killed S strain, and then they added each enzyme separately into that mixture. So they took hit killed of S strain completely devoid of carbohydrates and lipids, and they utilized proteases as an enzyme with that mixture. And further, this hit killed S strain with proteases, they mixed it with the R strain. So what must have happened within the mixture? Whatever the protein molecules were there in the cell, they were completely denatured. So as a result, you can see transformed R strain was observed, meaning on even in the absence of proteins, that S strain were able to completely transform that R strain. Then in second thing, or in second set, what they did, they again took heat killed of S strains devoid of carbohydrates and lipids, and they utilized RNases. Now as a result, whatever RNA molecule were there in the cell, heat killed S strain, they were completely degenerated by the use of RNases. And then this mixture was used with the R strain, or mixed with the R strain. Now what must have happened? Whatever RNA molecules were there, they were completely absent. So in result, you can see transformed R strain were still observed, meaning even in the absence of R strain, that S strain is capable of transformation. And in third set, what they used, the DNases enzyme with the heat killed R strain. And when they use this enzyme, they observe that no transformation has occurred, meaning if DNA is not present, no transformation will occur. So this was very clear result that DNA will be the genetic material and not the protein. But scientific community didn't accept their experiment because the question was raised on the purity of enzymes. That means what is the guarantee that your enzymes were completely free of any kind of contamination, right? So not only enzymes, but something else must have acted on that particular DNA molecule, which made it available, or which caused no transformation, right? So question was raised on that. So finally, Hershey and Chase experiment was the third and the last in this journey who completely proved that DNA acts as a genetic material. So this was again very remarkable and a milestone experiment in the history of molecular biology. They proved that DNA is a genetic material. For their experiment, they used two organisms, E. coli and bacteriophage. Now, E. coli is the bacterial cell, and bacteriophage is a virus which affects or which cause infection in a bacterial cell. So in the diagram you can see how exactly that bacteriophage looks like. It has its head made up of proteins or a capsid, and it has a collar which connects the tail part and the head part between, and it has a tail on the below side. Along with these two organisms, they used radioactive isotopes. Now you know about the regular isotopes. They were the different forms of the same molecule. But what were the radioactive isotopes? They are the isotopes which generate certain kind of radiations. So two radioisotopes were used, S35 for sulfur and P32 for phosphorus. Now why did they selected these two isotopes only? It is because S35, that is sulfur, is present only in proteins but not in DNA, and P32, that is phosphorus, generally phosphorus is present only in DNA and not in proteins. So that was the purpose behind selecting these two isotopes only. So what they did further, they studied the life cycle of bacteriophage first of all. So whenever this bacteriophage of infect any kind of bacterial cell, it goes with the 4 stages. First stage is the attachment stage. So you can see in the diagram that bacteriophage cell has bacteriophage is attached to the outer surface of the bacterial cell. Once it is attached, second stage is penetration. So in this stage, it delivers its genetic material into the bacterial cell, or more precisely you can say it inserts its DNA into the bacterial cell. And further the third step comes, that is biosynthesis. So here is the multiplication period. So whatever the DNA is present within the bacterial cell, it starts making its own copies, and eventually number of bacteriophages were made within that bacterial cell. And the fourth stage is the assembly stage, where the bacteriophage particles are assembled together all with their complete structure. And the fifth step is the release. That means whatever that bacterial cells it has infected, they lyse that cell, completely break open that cell, and they come out. So this is the total cycle of bacteriophage. Remember one thing, whenever they insert their genetic material or the DNA inside the bacterial cell, they only delivers their DNA and not the protein coat and capsid. So it was very easy for them to distinguish between whether DNA is a genetic material or a protein, because if DNA is the genetic material, it will present inside the cell, or it will present inside the next bacteriophages which are released after infection. and if protein were the genetic material, whatever the outer part or the part remains behind after infection, that will tell them about the proteins if it is the genetic material. Then here is the key steps which were followed by them. So very first thing, they took the fresh nutrient medium into two different conical flasks, and in one they have added the P32, that is radioisotope P32, and in second flask they have added S35. So whatever that media which was there, phosphorus or P32 was the only source for their DNA multiplication, and S35 was the only source for their protein multiplication. So whatever proteins and DNA will be made within that bacteria or in that bacteriophage, they will surely incorporate this P32 and S35 within their structure. Then second step is they grew the E. coli cells within those two bacterial cells. So once they made this nutrient medium, they added E. coli cells into the medium. Then E. coli cells were multiplied within the medium and were completely labeled by those radioactive isotopes. So whatever the proteins were there in the bacterial cell, they were labeled by S35, and whatever the DNA was present within the bacterial cell, it was labeled by P32. Now they allow bacteriophage to infect E. coli. Then next stage was, after growth of bacterial cell, they allowed bacteriophage to come and infect these labeled bacterial cell. Now if that bacterial cell itself, it is labeled with the P32 and S35, whatever bacteriophages will grow on that particular labeled bacterial cells, they will also get labeled with P32 and S35. So this was the basic idea, that they tried to made the labeled bacteriophage. Now as a result, they got the labeled bacteriophages, meaning whatever the outer covering of phage was there, that is capsid, it was labeled by S35 after growing in the presence of labeled bacteriophage, and whatever the inside material, that is DNA, was there, it was completely labeled with P32 radioisotope. Now it was very clear to distinguish between these two. Further, they utilized the labeled bacteriophage, or they completely took out these labeled bacteriophages after their growth and infection, or after completing their life cycle, and they allow them to infect the another fresh E. coli culture. So first step was they try to make the labeled bacteriophages, and those labeled bacteriophages were used to infect the fresh E. coli cells. Now at this time they were having a track on path by which bacteriophage is attacking or infecting the bacterial cells, and what exactly it is using as its replication machinery or replication material, whether it is using protein for its multiplication or whether it is using DNA for its multiplication, that they were focusing on. So after their growth in the bacterial in the cell containing fresh E. coli culture, they went for blending and centrifugation steps. Now what was the purpose behind this blending and centrifugation steps were, if you have seen in the previous slide that how exactly their life cycle goes, in the second stage what was mentioned, whatever that bacteriophage is there, it attaches with the bacterial cell like this, and it only enters its DNA into the bacterial cell, right? So whatever that capsid remains, it remains outside the cell. So blending was performed in order to ensure whatever that external part is there, it will completely thrown off, and now whatever they will have is just the DNA of bacteriophage in the bacterial cell. So this was the purpose of blending. And then the last step was centrifugation. So we'll see how exactly this centrifugation acted on them. So in the centrifugation step, they got the tube with two parts, that is supernatant and the pellet. So supernatant part and the pellet part. On the upper side you have supernatant, which is having less density particles, and the downward part, that is pellet, which has the higher density particles. So here the density of bacteriophage were very less. So that is, as their size it is in nanometers, so their density was very low. but the bacterial cells whose size is in micrometers, so they possess the higher density. So whatever bacterial cells were there, they possess, or they were present in this pellet portion. Now further they observed two cases. Case 1, in which they observed higher radioactivity in supernatant. So the upper part, that is supernatant, was showing higher radioactivity, and radioactivity of what? That is S35. It means whatever that protein coat was there, it was there present in the supernatant part. And the case 2 was the higher radioactivity in the pellet part, which was about the P32, meaning whatever the pellet cells were there, they were showing higher radioactivity of P32, which clearly means that if bacterial cells were present in the pellet part and they are showing the presence of P32, they haven't added any kind of P32 during growth of bacterial cells. Where they have added P32? Into the bacteriophage, right? So what that bacteriophage did, it entered its own DNA into the bacterial cell and made it radioactively labeled with P32, and that made it clear that whatever the genetic material is there, it is just the DNA and not the protein. From this experiment, they concluded that DNA is transferred as into the next generation as a genetic material. So DNA was the only thing which is responsible for replication of these bacteriophages, and as they were labeled with two different things, that is S35 in proteins and P32 in DNA, and eventually they got the highest amount of radioactivity of P32, it was very clear that DNA acts as a genetic material and nothing else. Now this was about these remarkable experiments and the basic topic of your molecular biology. Here I have enlisted certain important questions which will surely help you. Like first is, what is molecular biology? So here you can put the definition which I told you, or whatever the language you are preferable with. So you can write that definition according to your understanding. Then secondly, who discovered the DNA? So lots of scientists has worked on this particular concept, but the name, first name you should take here is the Frederick Miescher. So he was the first who isolated genetic material. It was later named as DNA. Then what is transformation? So I told you that whenever the transfer of DNA occurs between two bacterial cells, it is termed as transformation. Or when one bacterial cell enters its genetic material into the another bacterial cells, this is nothing but the transformation. Then explain in detail Griffith's experiment. So here you have to start with the requirements of the Griffith's experiment, that is how he has selected the S strain and R strain, and you have to explain all those four cases, that is individual S strain, then individual R strain, then heat killed S strain, and the lastly that is mixture of S strain and R strain, and what was the result of all these four cases and what he has concluded from those four experiments, that is he put forth the transforming principle. The next question is, give the conclusion of Hershey and Chase experiment. So here you just have to focus on the conclusion part, that is after performing that centrifugation step in the last part, what they have concluded from their results, that is the upper layer, that is supernatant, what it is showing or what radioactivity it has shown, and the pellet part, what radioactivity that pellet part has shown, and among that which was the highest part or which was the radioactive molecule which were present in the bacterial cells or in the DNA, that you have to focus on. And the last part, that is write a short note on history of molecular biology. So in this part you have to explain about the contribution of scientists in the discovery of DNA, or simply who coined the term nuclein and all these things. So you just have to enlist among certain important evidences of the molecular biology in this particular question. All these questions are ranging from 2 marks to 5 marks, so you can practice according to them. Apart from this, to refer for this particular subject, you can go for James Watson book, a book by James Watson, and the Gene 8 by Levin. So you can use these two references in order to find out answers of these questions, or simply from this lecture also you can get the answers. So that's all for today, and thank you so much.